Thank you all. It's great to be back here. This is my second time talking about Lightroom here, and figured change it up a little bit and talk about tethered workflow. So I saw some hands before. How many of you guys are shooting tethered already? A few? Okay. So majority of you are not. I'm going to go a little bit into tethering and a little bit into workflow and kind of how they merge together. Quick disclaimer, this is my workflow. As with any Adobe product out there, there's 5, 10 different ways to do stuff sometimes. So you may have a different way. It's not wrong. It's just your way to do it. But Lightroom is built for you guys. It's built for photographers where Photoshop was built for designers. So don't go back to your old workflow after today. Try to stay with what I'm teaching you, because that's what my problem was I went out and I do everything on the front end and then I go move folders at night and get OCD and start moving folders around on my desktop. And it would totally mess me up. I'd wake up, there'd all be question marks, and Lightroom was useless then. So new workflow. So we're going to talk about workflow today. Just a word for getting from A to B to C all the way to the end. So instead of importing, which is usually my first part of workflow, we're going to be tethering today. Then we're going to be sorting the images, moving them around, picking out which colors are right, erasing the bad ones, and then moving to actually post-processing, which is the editing part. So there's a bunch of stuff that goes before you actually edit. And then because you're bringing stuff into Lightroom, you have to get it back out, which would be export, and then going to be printing. So here's an expanded view of what I do every time, and the program does most of this for me. So again, so we're not importing. So there's a few things you see change there on the workflow. I don't have to put my SD card in now because I'm going to plug my camera in and tether. I get it to my computer, shoot tethered instead of importing, and then I move around, make a duplicate backup, cull or sort the images, whatever word you prefer, delete my bad images. I personally don't like to save my bad images. That hurts me when I go teach because then I don't have any things to show examples of. But I just delete them all. I just delete them. I don't want them. If it's messed up pictures, I get rid of them. Keyword the good images. The way Lightroom works is by keywording. So the more you can keyword stuff, we're going to talk about that later, the easier time you're going to have a year from now finding a picture from New York when you're walking around here today. Edit and post-process. So look at how much happens before I even start editing, and most of that is automatic. At that point, when I'm editing, I will move out of editing into more editing on plugins or in Photoshop if I need to, and then I'll rename my images at that point. Now, the reason I do that, you can rename on import a lot of times. I rename them there because I used to have to deal with brides. I was doing event photography, and I didn't need crazy brides banging on my door the next day going, "Where are my pictures?" So, and also they would be asking me where number 2 through 5 are, because if you number them at the beginning and you erase a bunch, like I like to do, erase a lot of stuff, you're missing big gaps of numbers in there. So just to keep fluid, I would rename them at the end of my process. You can rename at the front as well if you don't do that. At that point, depending on where I'm going with the images, if I'm going on Facebook or social media, I would watermark them. And then, or if I'm not, I'm just going to export them to 300 DPI and send them back out. So a little bit of expanded view there. Here's a rig that I use for tethering. It has a bunch of different moving parts. You don't have to use all of these parts. I'm going to tell you what I use again. So I use a MacBook Pro. I have a tether cord here and a tether table, and of course my camera. Things I added to my workflow here are a plasma screen, because I like to see it nice and large, and I like to, if I'm shooting a model or a commercial shoot, I like them to see it that big so that they can look at it and say, "Oh, that was a great pose," or "No, I want to tweak this a little bit." You know, we shoot, with commercial stuff, you shoot, I'll show you some stuff in there like minivans. It's not very exciting, but they want to get it perfect, get the lighting perfect. And 3 inches on the back of my camera isn't enough for them to make a decision for a billboard or something like that. So here's a few of them. The arrow table is this one. It's a table that you can put on a C-stand. You can put it on a regular stand. You can put it on your tripod if you're going to shoot out in the field. So you can do this stuff out for landscape photography too. The reason I use this, it's orange. People don't trip over it. You can use the wire that comes with your camera as well, and they just get an extension. A jerk stopper. This is proprietary. So this actually clips in to my camera right here. And what this is actually pretty handy. So when you step on it, you don't break your camera or pull your laptop off the arrow table. So the best $10 thing I own. You know how many times you don't think you're going to step on it, but my wire plugs in, and that actually gets all the impact. So if I break this for 10 bucks, then I'm not pulling a $3,000 laptop off or breaking my camera port and having to send it in. I personally have to use a separate program I'll show you guys if anyone is interested later on, called USB Tether, because Lumix does not tether into Lightroom directly. Nikon and Canon do. So for the Lumix, I'm using a program called Promote Systems USB Tether. And then I use an Apple TV. So again, I could move this around with my laptop anywhere in my studio, and it's Apple TV to my plasma. So getting ready to tether, basically these are the steps that I'm going to move into. So we're going to open Lightroom up first, plug in my Tether Tools cable, and attach the jerk stopper immediately. Because if you do it, I've done it before, I forget, you know, and you always step on it. Another tool you're going to have to be careful with. Some different model cameras need this. So it's by Tether Tools, it's a boost. It's basically a power booster. Nikon's need it, my Lumix needs it. And basically it plugs in, it looks like a USB, what do you call that, port, where you can plug 3 or 4 things into it, and that's going to boost the power for any of the USB 3 devices out there. So all the new cameras are probably going to need it. What happened, I found out, was it would drop. So I'd be shooting, and all of a sudden I wouldn't be connected anymore. And I know Nikon people have a lot of problems with that. For Nikon, I believe you also need to have a card in your camera to make this stuff work. Then I turn the camera on and select File Tethered Capture in the menu. So quickly moving over to real Lightroom, I go File right here, down to Tethered Capture. It's this simple actually, and then Start Tethered Capture. So hopefully you guys can see that. When I click that, this window pops up. You can name your session. So I'm going to name the session B&H Event Space Shoot. You could name the files, which in this case with tethering, I do name the files because the IMG001 means nothing to me anyway. So I have a template that's pre-made for this. I just drop down, pick my name out, and my template will actually call it B&H Event Space 2015-001. The destination, where do I want to go to? That's as simple as choosing the file or the folder. You can add it to a collection. I normally don't do that. A folder is enough for me. You can add your metadata, which I do suggest adding the metadata. So every time you shoot a picture, it's putting all your copyright and contact information on there. So I have that pre-made. I simply select that, and then I can put keywords in for today. So B&H, BH, event space, so forth and so on, model shoot. When you are done, you hit OK, and you get this nifty little floating toolbar here, which I'm not connected right now, so it's not going to find it. So this floats. You can put it out of your way down here, and you can actually use this toolbar to shoot the camera. So if you are a macro shooter and you have it all on a tripod, I can actually click this button right here and fire my camera now right from there, or I can fire it while I'm holding it. If you see the no camera detected, that's bad. So that means you're not connected somehow, and start the process over. Just turn your camera on and off. Usually that will trigger it sometimes. If not, I'll do stop tethering and start the tethering again. Another little thing I'm going to show you guys right here, and I've used this for a few shoots, develop settings on that little bar. So you can actually bring pictures in with develop settings. So if you look at the pictures I was shooting here, so I'll show you what that looks like. So see, all your develop settings are right there. Lightroom black and white filters, all the stuff that you see on your left side in your presets, you can bring into your picture on shooting it as you fire it. So if you look at my pictures of Jamal here, I turned that on lower in the actual shoot, and it was popping up black and white. So I can actually see the pictures in black and white. So if your vision is, or you have your own presets, you can have it as you're shooting, converting it. It's one less step you have to do later on. So again, just to recap, tethered capture, start tethering. It opens up this window. A couple of points you want to look at is your session name, your template, the location of where the files are going to go, keywords and metadata. At the very least, I do those. You can do some of the other stuff, but for the sake of time, we're going to skip over some of those. So you get your floating tether bar. Check to make sure your camera is connected. You'll have settings in there. Those settings are the ones that are on your camera. As you change them, they're going to change in the middle part there, your white balance and everything. Develop settings should be set to none unless you want them to be set to something else. This one, as you saw, was set to black and white look 5, and then that's your trigger button if you're going to actually use your shutter button from there. With the Lumix and Olympuses and other cameras that you can't actually connect the right way, you have to shoot to a watched folder many times. So what a watched folder is you put a folder on your desktop or on your hard drive somewhere, and you have it that any file that hits that, whether you drag it in there or you shoot it in there, actually is going to pop up and populate into Lightroom. So it's just as simple as using tethered capture. If you look right here, you're going to go to auto import right below tethered capture, and you go over to enable auto import. A window and then the auto import settings on your right side window, that window is going to pop up, and very similar settings that we just went over. Names, metadata, all that stuff. So as you see, it's almost identical to the pop-up screen. You have to make sure at the very top that enable auto import is on. So now if you drag files over, they're going to go right into Lightroom as long as it's open. The USB Tether by Promote Systems, this is the window for it. And again, I'll talk about this later if you guys are shooting. Or is anyone out there shooting Lumix or Olympus or anything like that? A few people? Okay. So this one is for Lumix. This is what lets me tether. So this will pop up, and I can actually do everything that the little floating bar does for my Lumix. That's all it is. It's just another version of it that is not built in. Eventually, I'm assuming Lightroom will build this stuff, or Adobe will build this stuff into Lightroom one day. It's a patch for right now, I'm hoping. With that one, you would choose your photos down, or your folder down here, and you're gonna choose the watched folder that you made in the previous slide, so that they're same. So where you're shooting to and where the watched folder is exactly the same on this program and the other one. And again, watched folders are useful for other things. Again, if you dump all your cards off and you don't want to, actually go through all the import process, you can just drop it right to there and it'll bring everything up in there. So better workflow. We're gonna get into some more of the Lightroom stuff now. Lightroom has several different modules. We only use a few of them for the most of us out there. So there's the library module. You have your develop module, map, book, slideshow, print, and web. The two I am in constantly is library and develop. I hide the rest of them by right-clicking. I can turn them on and off just by right-clicking in this area. So if I don't want print right now, I click that, it goes away. If I want to bring back the book, because I'm going to make a book. So part of workflow, of your getting a better workflow and building a better workflow, is getting stuff out of your way so that you don't have to look at it, click on it, be using keyboard commands, just getting from one place to another very quickly. So I get rid of the clutter. So basically I would click here, I would turn everything off except library and develop. And I hardly go up there and even click. I usually just hit GED. Grid brings me over to here. I want to get the develop, I hit D. I want to get back, I hit G. It brings me right back to where I want to go. Sorting and culling your images. After I bring all the images in, I'm shooting them now. So I skipped over that whole import process. So I don't have to do all that convoluted import stuff because I shot, it went right into my camera. I mean, it went right from my camera onto my hard drive. So I skipped a whole bunch of my old workflow processes. So I can jump right into sorting stuff with my client, with my model, with the family. So they can come right over. It's on the plasma, they saw it first, but now that I bring them around the side, let's go look through these and pick out which ones you like. So I go into loop mode, which is E, that's that GED part. The thumbnails are across the bottom, which I'll show you in a second. And then I put my fingers on 6, 7, and 8. That's the numbers on the top of your keyboard, 6, 7, and 8. And for me, you can define these any way you see fit. I define them as red, yellow, green is delete, needs editing, and keep or pick. I also have a blue when I upload it or it's processed and I have it for sale already on Fine Art America or SmugMug. That's my blue, so I know not to edit it again or change it or anything. Gray is also a color, skipped, and there's a purple. I don't use it because purple and blue are too close in Lightroom. They're just very similar colors. And you want to do this quick. You don't want to be sitting there like, oh, do I really like this? It's either good or bad. This is a quick process. So that's kind of what it looks like when you're done right there. And how many of you guys use stars out there? How many use flags? All right, if you look at the screen up behind me, the flags I can't even see. They're tiny on there, but the stars I can see, but they're super small. Where we're visual, we're photographers, where's the green? It's right there. You can see the green from way in the back over there. It's very easy to see. I can bring a whole screen up, filter it down to just my greens, and know exactly which ones I need to work on to turn them into blues for sale. So for me, this works a little bit better. So this is how it kind of works. So like I said, you're in your loop mode here, which just means enlarged. So it's a bigger view there. I pick out a color, 6, 7, or 8, and then I just move on. Like, this is how quick I do it. I'm not looking at the screen, but I'd normally be looking at the screen, pick a color. Do I love it? Do I hate it? And then when I go back to grid, I can easily look at which one I'm going to delete, which one I'm going to edit a little bit more or save as a B-roll, and which one I'm going to actually edit into a blue. So a little bit simpler way, very quick. If you want to skip a step, you can actually turn caps lock on, and that'll auto advance it for you. So, and if you make a mistake, you can just hit it again. So if I click this as green, I hit green and it takes it right off. So nothing's destructive in here. If you put caps lock on, I can just hit it. It auto advances as I add a color. So I can do it with one hand. You don't even need to hit the forward arrow. All right, erasing the reds. I told you earlier, I erase as much as I can because I just don't, it's not even a hard drive space issue anymore. It's the fact that I just want them out of my way. If it's blurry, I shot my feed. I shoot a lot of lightning and monsoons out there in Arizona, and I have lots and lots of frames that have nothing in them. So I just want to delete them all. So you bring up your grid, G mode, so your library. The frames around them have all the colors now, if you went through and color coded them. And don't fall behind on that. Keep color coding them every shoot. Try to keep on top of it. I go up to the edit menu up on top and select by color label, red, and then it's going to select them all. And then you simply hit the delete button. So it would look like this. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to do edit. And you could do this by flag or rating too, so you don't have to adopt my color system, but it's right above it. Select by flag and select by rating. Do red. The red ones are selected now. You can see how it's kind of white, and then you basically hit delete. So this pops up. It says delete the 2 selected master photos from the disk or just remove them from Lightroom. So usually, let's see, it is kind of pulsating. Usually remove is like blinking, like click me, click me, click me. I don't see it doing it anymore, but it's definitely highlighted. Never click remove. What remove is going to do is it's going to take it out of Lightroom, and it's going to delete it from Lightroom, but not actually delete the files. It doesn't delete the files off your disk. You always want to do delete from disk, and then it's going to actually delete it out of Lightroom and delete it off of your hard drive as well. So they don't become like orphaned files where they're kind of just floating around, but you can't see them anymore. My goal, and this is, I don't know if this ever happened for me, is getting them all green. So I'm always trying to get all the files that I have as my selects. And it may take a little bit of post-processing. It may take using some Photoshop. But the way I get there when I have a series of photos, especially with people photography, where you have a lot of pictures like this, is different view modes. So this view mode I'm going to speak about is survey mode. The icon looks like the little icon you see up here. It lives down here, right on the bottom right there. And what happens is it's going to bring up a series of pictures. Depending how many you select, it's going to bring those up. So in this one, I selected 9 pictures on here, and you select them on the bottom, you hit the little button, they populate up. As you start to go through them, and this works with similar poses. You don't want to actually do something that's not a pose that works. So I hit Shift Tab, it gets rid of all my other windows and clutter, and I just have these poses up there. So the first one's really not the same pose, so I would get rid of that one by hitting the X. Second one I don't love. Now I'm down to, the jacket commercial people are looking at it, they're like, which one do you love? So we're looking at it, and they're like, well, he's looking too straight at the camera at this one. We don't like the hood in this one. And as you see what's happening, they're getting bigger as you're going through and clicking on the ones that they don't like, your client doesn't like, you don't like. So now we're down to these 2, and they're like, yeah, we still don't love the hood, let's get rid of that one. Now you're down to your most selected one that the client picked or you picked, and you can mark that green, and then you could just hit escape and get back out of it. Now to get your tabs back on the side, you hit shift tab, all your menus pop back up again. The next mode that I would go to, and this is usually a little bit different type of mode, so compare mode looks like this again, XY, lives in the same place, right next to survey mode, right here. And what compare mode does is it's kind of like American Idol, where you have like your best and your runner-up, or some show like that where you're actually going through and they keep challenging each other. So when you hit compare, it brings up the first one and the second one. You don't have to select them like with the survey mode. And you can just keep hitting your right arrow till you find one you like better. When you find one, down in the bottom right corner, oh, mine's hidden, it's right there. Well, I can do this for now. There's another button to the right there that'll actually pop it over to the left side as my select. So you see up here it says select and candidate. The one on my left is my favorite. And then I keep going through on the one on the right till I find one better. I say, well, that's the one GQ wants. Move it over, and then when you're ready, you can hit green, mark it green, and then escape out again. When you would change is when you got to a different pose. So when I got to like this pose, it's totally different now. So it's not the same kind of set. So then I'd be done and I would start another compare to continue going through those. We talked earlier about keywording. So Lightroom is by default a database. Yes, you can edit in it, you can edit your RAWs, but it's all based on keywords. And part of taking, I looked at my pictures when I was shooting film, and there was maybe 1,000 for the year back in the day, and then it would go to like 2,000 or 5,000. By the time I bought that 20D, there's 10 or 20,000 photos in those same years of time. So you have to deal with a lot of media. And that's what Lightroom's helping me with, is sorting it, going through, picking the best ones, deleting the bad ones. So when you get 10,000, 20,000, I have over a couple 100,000 photos now, it's just hard to find them. So when you go in and start keywording stuff, that's going to help your workflow move along, because when you want to find something that's New York City, B&H model shoot, you can type a couple words in and find it in a few seconds. So keyword stuff, well, if you've fallen behind on keywording, go back. I'll turn the TV on and let it play in the background and just keyword stuff. Keyword this folder tonight, tomorrow keyword another folder. So you start to get ahead. There's 3 separate places you can keyword. You have global, general, and specific. And there's 3 different ways to add. This part is going to be specific. Earlier, on Tethered Shoot, it was a section for keywords. So you were able to globally add everything for the shoot there, but you wouldn't want to put specific outfit names on it or specific locations if you were going to move around. Because say the model or subject is going to change and you say red dress, and then she has a red dress on and then changes to a black dress, the keyword's not going to apply anymore. I typed rainbow into my thing one day and had hundreds of photos that weren't rainbows, and it's just because I put it on all of these photos because there was one rainbow in one picture, and then you have to kind of work backwards. So don't keyword poorly. On the right side, you can actually type them in right here. It's going to be on the right side of your grid. So if you go to grid, you'll see it right here, keywording. And you simply can enter keywords in there. You select the images you want, one or all. You could do Command A, Control A, bring them up, and you could type them with commas or semicolons between them. But I've found a little bit better way of keywording my specific keywords. When you're in that same mode, you have a little tiny spray can, and the spray can in here and in Photoshop do 2 totally entirely different things. This spray can sprays stuff, not paint, not writing or anything like that. So you have to be in the library mode in order to see it. It's built into your dock on the lower side, and I'll show you that in a second. So a picture there. And you're actually able to select specific keywords, and you can spray them onto your pictures as you go. Here's where it lives. It's right there. Now, one thing to note about this tool is there's several tools in here. When you select them, they become your pointer. So you have to redock them at the end, or you're stuck with a spray can. So as I click it, see, it became my pointer. Now, directly to the right of it, it's set to labels now. I'm going to change that to keywords. Pretty simple. And then directly to the right of that, I'm really zoomed in so you guys can see. I'm going to type in model New York City, model shoot, and then I could say jacket. All right, we'll zoom back out. So that's right there on the bottom. I undocked, I changed it to keywords, I typed my keywords in. Now I'm gonna go to all of the ones that he's wearing a jacket in and start to click them. And you see there's a white line that goes around it that kind of highlights it. That means it's actually been keyworded already. If I click it again, it doesn't do anything. It's not gonna double or triple the keywords. It's just gonna only allow it one time. So where this starts to get really nice is I can start to drag it very quickly, much more quickly on my big 27-inch Mac. I'm holding, so you have to start in the middle. So you start in the middle here, and if you start on the bar, you lose your, if you start on the gray bar, you lose your actual little painter. So you start in the middle and you don't need a shift key or anything, you just drag. And if I can make the icon smaller, my screen's kind of crunched right now, I'd be able to just go very quickly over all 100 photos I shot with the jacket. Then I would go back down here and I would click and take jacket out and put the next outfit and say, you know, hat. And then I can, you know, and you can put as many keywords that are actually good keywords for the shoot. You know, and then I could go back up and do chair and then just hit all these. So you kind of don't want to go through it too much, but you kind of get the point that I can do stuff without having to stop, go over on the side, type penguin, go down, and then do the penguins. And you know, you're actually able to do it very easily and quickly. And the reason I got into this is I used to do the whole shift or alt thing or control thing and go down and select them all until the one time that I selected like 100 photos and skipping them, and then I clicked the wrong button and I missed it, and then they all got unselected and I was like, all my things just got unselected, I gotta sit there and do it again. And you know, so this way you don't have to worry about it unselecting, you just hit them, go down, change the keyword. You gotta type the keyword in anyway, so whether you type it up there or down here, to me it's much easier to have a tool to do that. Now when I'm done, remember I said I had to redock it. So I have to go back down to this little circle, drop it back in there, and you're done. So now you can move on from keywording. I've made up metadata presets I showed you earlier. So when I tether shoot and when I import stuff, everything is actually done in my workflow. So everything we talked about in the whole left side of the workflow, I'll bring that picture up later, is done automatically. So I don't have to do a whole lot. I can literally just, you know, when I am importing and not tethering, I can just hit import and it just brings everything and it does it for me. So part of that is making your metadata preset ahead of time to speed that workflow up. So you go into edit presets in your metadata. So that lives right here. It's on a grid. So you go to grid, right side, metadata, and then you see it right here. And you could drop down and select edit presets. Brings up a window. And I'm going to bring mine up so you can see it. So it brings up a window and you have to just fill out everything that's applicable to you. So I always put a copyright in there. I put in that it is copywritten. That's just a drop down box. I put not for commercial use without written consent from my name. So that means if I was shooting for a bride and a magazine calls her up and says we want to put you on the front of the bridal magazine, she can't go and sell that commercially to them for a profit. It's still our image. We own the copyright even though she paid us to shoot a private party. She can print them and put them on her walls and make albums, all that stuff, but when it comes to commercial use, you still have the rights to that unless you sign them away to her. So that goes on every image unless otherwise I have a contract with a client. I put my website there. If you have a specific copyright website with all of your information, you can put that website URL there. I put my name, but not my address. Again, crazy brides. I don't need crazy brides banging on my door asking where the images are the next morning. Like, you said you'd have them by tomorrow, you know? So I don't put an address there. If you have a business address or a PO box, feel free to put that in there. I do put a city, so if people, this all becomes keywords too, so I do put a city and a state in there, and I do put a phone number and my email so that they can hire me if they want to. Fine, if they want to email me at 4 in the morning, that's fine, just don't come banging on my door. If you are shooting models, there's another cool one down here that it says extension models. You can put their information if they're underage. You can put a disclosure if you have it, release status if you have some kind of ID system. You can put all of that in there. One of the little notes about this one is there's a little done button down here that doesn't always save it. I get in the habit of when these boxes pop up to go up here and say save current setting as new preset. I've hit done too many times and it doesn't save it. So I go to the top, drop that down, save it. It's one of those quirky Adobe things. All of your windows, all of your bars on the side, left side and right side on both your grid and develop have these little windows that open, catalog, folders, collections, stuff like that. What happens is they all stay open, which again, on my big computer doesn't make a difference because it's got a lot of real estate. On my laptop, which a lot of people are working on laptops, I enact the solo mode. So I actually enable this. It's pretty simple. The problem is you have to do it 4 times. So you have to do it on the left side of grid, on the right side of grid. And then you have to go to develop and do it on the left side and the right side. All this does is when you open up, say, catalog, that stays open while you're using it. When I click on folders, it closes the catalog out of my way so that I don't, and it's more a problem in develop on the right side when you open them all and I have to scroll 12 times to get back to the top. So this saves you a little bit of time. So I'll show you how to do that. So you have to go on to the dark, see it doesn't work on the light gray here. You have to go into the dark gray areas. And then you'll see it right there, solo mode. This should be a default. So and then I have to go back over here onto any one of these darker gray areas. And then I just click on that. And then I hit develop and do the same thing. Once you do it, it's done. And again, too many times I've had to scroll all the way from the bottom, from camera calibration all the way up to the top on this, because every one of those will stay open. If not, so right now when I click basic and I go down and click tone curve, it closed basic for me. And then when I come down here and I click on HSL, the other 2 are closed. So they're out of my way. You only have 1 mouse pointer, so you can't go and work in more of those spaces anyway. So I just got in the habit of every time I get Lightroom, I put solo mode in there and I'm done. Getting into the actual editing part and developing part of Lightroom. So this is an expanded view of everything on that right side of develop. So you have a ton of different sliders on there. You have, we're not gonna go into, this isn't a total editing class, so we're not gonna go into everything here. A couple of new ones, you have some new ones up here. You have the adjustment brushes. There's some new features they put in for people that have CC. You have a haze and dehaze slider that's in there now. So that's been very handy. There's a lot of new stuff they've been putting in for CC. So if you haven't updated to that CC version, they're going to keep putting new toys in here for us. And a lot of them are photography toys that are actually pretty helpful. You can do panoramics in here now under this photo merge on an unrelated topic, but that was just, you know, something I had to go to Photoshop all the time to do HDR and panos, and they're putting it in here because you pay 10 bucks for both now, so they don't have to keep it kind of on just the Photoshop side. So we're starting to get some cooler stuff, keep the workflow going, make stuff simpler where I can just do my photo merge and I get a DNG out of it as well here. So everything is on the right side here. I normally will, let's see if I can find a photo that we can play with here real quick. All right, let's reset this one. All right, so we'll reset this photo. So normally the first thing I do is see a little bit of the softbox in there is I crop out whatever I don't need to get that correct. And then I start working down the sliders here on the right side. So I'll check the color temperature. You have a dropper here that you can actually drop it on a neutral gray, and sometimes it's right, sometimes it's not. Let's see, it's not too bad. So basically click around till you get a white balance that you love. What that did is basically move the sliders for you, so you can easily move the sliders yourself and play with the white balance. Tint, I don't play with tint too much at all. And it doesn't even move that much even when you use the eyedropper. So I just generally stick with the tint unless it's something that's way off. Exposure is how much light you're bringing in. So if you've overexposed or underexposed, you can correct here or you can adjust if you want to. So we're going to go a little bit darker with that to the left. I'm going to bring a little bit of separation between the lights and the darks up with my contrast. So on this particular picture, there's not too many highlights except in his skin where it's a little bit overexposed. That'll help bring some of the detail back in there. It works great for landscapes as far as bringing in the clouds and the detail in your very bright areas of the picture, and you're going left with that. You're usually trying to bring stuff back in. So we'll go slightly left with that. We'll bring some of the shadows out on his left side by bringing the shadows up. Bring the whites down slightly, and the blacks are a little bit gray. We'll bring a little bit more contrast in there. So clarity works like contrast, but in a smaller capacity. So it's not as harsh as your contrast. So you can go up and work on that a little bit. For guys, you can go pretty far and make it look grungy. So we'll make him look a little grungy on this one. So you can see his skin tone is, at least on my screen, this one's not fully color corrected, is a little bit orange. So the vibrance works on some of the greens and blues out there where the saturation will affect the oranges. So if I have people in the picture and I have greens and blues, I'll generally work with vibrance. This one I want to actually desaturate a little bit. So I'm going to go down a little bit like that with my saturation. So you see where I'm kind of transforming this already a little bit with a few sliders. And if I wasn't talking you through it, I'd probably be done in about 2 seconds going through those sliders. So HSL, you have a couple different modes here. HSL and color do the same thing, it's just the way it's configured there. So we're going to stick in HSL. You have hue, saturation, and luminance. And you can move each one of the different colors and bring different colors in and out. So let's say go to the oranges. So you notice it's just changing him. So if we want it to look like the Hulk, we can bring oranges in or out, and that's just changing the type of color out there. So the hue of it, which doesn't look very appealing in this. Saturation is how much color? Is it a lot of orange? Very orange, like Snooki? Or less or no orange? And then the luminance is how much light's coming through the orange. So do we want less light or do we want a lot of light to bleed through? So I do use these a lot if you want to play with colors and move them around. I'll actually go through all of those. If you go over to the color mode, it just flip-flops it to where you pick the color on top instead of having the slider, and then you have sliders for hue, saturation, and luminance. Depends which way you think. When you go over to black and white, it will convert it to a black and white automatically, and then you're using them more as filters back and forth, changing the tones. So sharpening and noise reduction, they work kind of against each other. If you take a blurry, noisy photo, you're kind of going to be out of luck. So as you start to noise reduce, it blurs the pixels together, and as you sharpen, it makes it crunchier and noisier. So you really have to pick one or the other. Take a blurry picture or take a noisy picture, but don't go out and take something at like 6400 ISO and shake the camera. So, because you're not going to be able to fix it. And it's just a trade-off. You have to play around with them. I start with the first slider on each one, and that little zoomed in part helps you a lot. I usually don't put it on his zipper. I'll usually move the zoomed part with this tool. So you can move it into, well, let's see, you can just move it into his eye with this. So I'll move it in and then decide, what I want sharpened. So I can work on sharpening or noise reduction. I see it super zoomed in there, and that helps me kind of see what I'm doing instantly. And then you could always zoom in on here as well for, to look at the skin and see what's actually happening as you're sliding those. There's no formula I can give you to say, oh yeah, put this much. It's not like a recipe. Well, it's kind of like my grandmother's recipes, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, just throw stuff in, some oregano, okay, we're good. But no one else knows how to really do it. So there's really no formulas. Just too much is not good with them. As you start to go too far, you'll see it get too blurry or too crunchy, kind of. I don't know if that's a technical Adobe term, crunchy, but we'll use it today. Lens correction. So, cool thing about this Lumix GH4 is every time I go to lens correct, it's like, oh, it's already done. So they're actually building them into the cameras now where it sends the information and corrects for the lenses, but with my Canon 5D Mark III, it doesn't. I have to actually come in here and I have to pick the lens out. So I simply jump in, and I always wonder why this wasn't automatically built in, because it knows what lens it is, it's in your metadata, it should just figure it out. You click it, it pops up, it says Canon 24-70 Mark II, and it puts it in and it'll change it for me. It's that easy, but it has to be done sometimes. It's not doing much. It's changing the vignetting, it's changing the chromatic aberration, and any barrel distortion that may be in there. So with the L lenses that I have, it doesn't change too much. I'm mostly seeing the vignetting, a very small bit of distortion, but pretty much with my older lenses, it changed a lot. It would be like boom. You'd see a noticeable difference. So if you don't have L quality lenses and glass, this helps a lot. When you have the newer ones, sometimes I'll click it and be like, well, I kind of like that vignette, and I turn it back off because it added a nice natural vignette to it. Here I've been taking some pictures of the buildings, and this helps a lot, this upright. It's not going to help with this picture at all, but you can actually click auto and a couple other different variations here, and it'll straighten the buildings out or attempt to straighten the buildings out. And if you want to do any of this stuff manually, you can go into the sliders here and transform it yourself right here. You have your lens vignetting and all that stuff on that last little bar that says manual under lens corrections. Moving down to effects. So on your effects, you can add vignetting back now, but your own vignetting. So I kind of take vignetting out, then I can add it back in. It's actually pretty easy. You just kind of bring it in. You would never want to do that much vignetting. And you go the other way and it'll make it white. So you get a little angelic look to them. So with vignetting, like most editing, less is more. You don't really want to see it. You want to just have a little bit. It's supposed to draw your eye towards the subject. You don't need to dump a bunch of vignetting in there. For the CC people, they've added the dehaze. I don't think it's in 6 yet. I think they're holding that back from you guys. But dehaze is also haze. So if you go one way, it will add haze. If you go the other way, it'll cut through haze. So I've seen some pretty cool effects where people add fog to their boat pictures and different things like that by going left or by cutting the haze out on a landscape or something like that. If you're doing people and you're using a smoke machine, you could cut through that smoke machine on them and still keep the effect of it. So that's a new slider that we just got not that long ago. So as I said earlier, I used to shoot a ton of event pictures. I had a big prom company in New Jersey and New York, and we'd shoot sometimes 8 or 10 proms a weekend with thousands of images between the portraits and then all the candid images. And for some reason, I thought it was a great idea to tell the client, yeah, I'll have them to you by tomorrow morning so that you guys could see them. And I was doing them all in Photoshop. So my wrist was totally ruined on the top. I couldn't even move it. I bought a trackball, and that helped for a while until then I couldn't move my thumb anymore. I bought a Wacom tablet and used that until my hand would be so stiff. So it was tedious and crazy doing it in Photoshop. So I got Lightroom, used it wrong, but I wanted to learn about, everyone sold me on Lightroom because of this sync feature, that I could sync these edits. So if the lighting is the same, like my prom pictures were, I'd set 2 or 3 lights up on a backdrop, step in, next, take the pictures. I can easily go through and edit the whole shoot in 5 minutes now, all 200 couples easily. So basically, I also found out about auto sync. So right under the sync button is auto sync. There's that little light switch right next to it. If you pop that up, as I'm editing, it's editing the rest real time for me. So if you haven't found that yet, I had a friend show me that, and I loved it. I actually use auto sync a lot more, and I'll actually show you why I started using the auto sync a lot more. So when you select more than one picture, you have the sync button that pops up here. I selected 3 pictures. It turns this button into a sync button on the bottom of the develop module. So if you click that sync button, you get this huge big box that slows down the whole sync process now. Now I have to go in there and I have to check 50 boxes on or off, or I can check all or check none. So you may not want to actually do every treatment to every picture. So instead of doing that and checking all those off and messing up, I simply flip the little switch, there's a little light switch on it, up, and it turns magically into the auto sync button. And if you've never used the auto sync button, as I'm editing one picture, let's move over it. So as I edit one picture, so say turn it into color, it starts to edit all the rest of the pictures that I selected as I actually go through them. Let's see if it makes a liar of me. Oop. Cancel auto sync. So let's see if it works. There it goes. So I darken those all the way down. There's two on the bottom right there. So as I bring them back up, it real time changes them. So if I select 50 or 100 or whatever it is, they're all changing. So the way I decide how I'm going to select on the bottom here is I look at the lighting on them. So when you look through your pictures, the lighting changes throughout your shoot. So, you know, for this headshot shoot, I would look along the bottom and make sure I did all the lighting the same, and then I would select those, say 10, and then move them up or down from there. And then as I edit them, they're all editing the same time. A little side note on this, I do go back and spot check them. But it's a lot easier to go back and spot check 1,000 photos than to, you know, actually have to sit there and edit each one separately. So I will go back, spot check, do tweaks, and then crop in on the ones that need cropping to crop stuff out. Moving along to exporting. So to export out, it's on your left side. You have a couple different ways. You can do publish services, which will let you download different services to publish right into. Facebook, Flickr, SmugMug, there's tons of them now you can put them into. And basically you put your login credentials in there for Facebook, and you can go right from Lightroom to Facebook. But for the regular export, it's right here. So you have an export button, unable to export. All right, so you have to have a picture selected. Oh, and I always do that too. How many times I've exported one photo? You have to select all the pictures you want, and then you actually get this window pops up. You have a bunch of different settings. A few that I want to highlight in here are the size and your quality. So when you're going through, this is just a zoomed part of that. JPEG goes out to go to like Bay Photo. When I go print, I print stuff at Bay Photo, so they want JPEGs. I put the quality up to 100 at that point, and then right down below in image sizing, I put it to 300 pixels per inch. So now I'm giving as much quality as I can give them to print that. Now when I go to Facebook, I bring that quality back to 50%, and then I bring it down to 72 resolution. And a lot of times I'll actually go into resize to fit and just lock it down to a 4x6 size. So longest edge as 6 inches. So that's just me. So then if someone steals it and tries to screenshot it, it's only about this big, not a 27-inch screen that they could screenshot. So if they want to print a 4x6, let them. All right, other workflow tips out there that we're going to go through. So something I found super useful, coming from Photoshop going to Lightroom, I had tons of copies. I had my black and white copy, I had my crop the boyfriend out copy, I had this copy, I had that copy, all these different copies, they were all real files, and I had to keep track of them. In Lightroom, I can actually do virtual copies. They all point back to a single RAW file. So all of these variations you see up here are one RAW file. And the way I can tell that is the lower left corner, it's folded up. So those are virtual copies. So as I made it a sepia tone, as I made it black and white, a blue tone, the regular color version, they're all pointing back to one. So if you start with a color or you start with say black and white and you make a copy, you're gonna have to reset the copy to get back to your color. So that's what kind of happened here. My color one is my last one. Normally I'll do the virtual copy first, but if you reset the virtual copy, it's not the end of the world. What's cool about these too is if you look in the upper left corner, you can actually stack all of these. So stacking comes in handy for this, panoramics, HDRs. Who's taken a panoramic? I've taken panoramics so many times, and I'm looking at the pictures going, I stink as a photographer. What was I taking a picture of? It's like a half of a tree, and then I start going through. I'm like, oh my God, it's a panoramic. So now I take them and I stick them all together. I stack them, and then you could put it behind the full panoramic picture that you actually took. So first thing you see is the completed one, and then all your pictures are behind that. Simply by hitting that little 4, they'll all crunch down and go behind the actual main image. So if you look here, and again, this helps my workflow. This is a workflow class. They're out of my way now. I don't have to see a 7-image HDR times how many times I took of the Grand Canyon. It all looks like one picture after a while, just light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. So if I go in here, so this is 1 of 3. So I click it, and it expands it. And I can close it. And the simple way to get there is you right-click on any image, go to stacking, and then this menu pops up with all these different options. The option I choose most of the time is auto stack by capture time, and you can select the time, how many seconds between shots. So when I'm doing a panoramic or an HDR, I'm shooting pretty quickly. Or if you're shooting the same pose tethered, you're shooting pretty quickly. So you're gonna shoot. You wait for the lights to recycle, you shoot again when they repose. So you can look at it, and you can say how many seconds, 4 seconds between shots. It's going to auto stack your whole shoot, and you could say collapse all those stacks. So right now in this shoot, it's going to give me 9 stacks, and there's going to be 23 that were too far apart where we stopped and there was a big space between it. So 23 are going to be not stacked. As you move this back and forth, it will change how many stacks you have. 2 stacks. So if you go longer seconds, it's going to give you more 8 stacks. So eventually they'll stack them all, which isn't good either, because then you have stuff that's not related to the same shot. The other part in there, back to stacking, you could unstack everything. You could remove a photo that was incorrect from your stacking. So if one got thrown in there by accident, you can collapse all or expand all. So say you're going to work on the panoramic, you're going to work on the HDR, you're going to work on whatever you were doing, Gigapan, you can go and expand them all and see them all now instead of clicking all those little boxes and actually bringing them all up. Remember I said you could put the panoramic at the top or the main edited photo at the top, move to top of stack. So you would find the photo that was the edited final image, move it to the top of the stack. That color one I can do that for. That was in my picture, and that'll be at the very top so I know which one is the one I like. So little nifty tools. Again, I'm all about making stuff go quick, get it out of my way if I don't know where it is. I can find it later by keywords or something else that I've done, color codes or keywords. So a couple little points to make. The numbers on the top tell you how many stacks you have. The little folds down here will tell you if they are virtual copies, and then when you have like a stacked look at like a papers looking stack up here, that shows you that they're closed, not expanded. Well, thank you guys for coming out. There's
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.